Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's 2023.
It's 2023, and we are realtors talking about real things and real stuff in real estate. And today we are going to talk about a couple of different topics that we thought were interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So topic one is going to talk about the interest rates and why do the mortgage rates follow the 10-year Treasury yield, and what's the difference between those and how does that happen basically?
Right. And yes, exactly. And how is the rate actually determined? Because it's not determined specifically by the government. It's determined by the person that's selling the loan.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go into a little bit more detail around that.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about some headlines, and we're going to talk about foreclosures. So
Foreclosures.
Dun, dun, dun.
Are they back?
Are they back?
Stay tuned. That'll be shortly. Okay. So
the 10-year Treasury.
yeah, it's been following them like for the last 50 years. It's been about averaging 1.79% below what the actual interest rate is.
Let's talk about what the 10-year Treasury yield is, because if you're not in the industry, you probably don't know unless you're like really into economics.
And even if you are in the industry, you probably don't know.
So we want to break this down a little bit at least. So the 10-year Treasury yield is the rate as it applies to mortgages or our industry. It's the rate at which mortgagors are going to be able to borrow money to loan us little people money for mortgages. So the 10-year Treasury yield sets this rate called prime. The banks are going to borrow it at that rate, and right now it's around it looks like 3.5%. But they're going to turn around and loan that money to us at a higher rate because that's how they make money and how they are also able to sell the loan.
So what you're saying is that the banks are borrowing the money from the government, and then the banks are turning around and loaning the money.
Yep.
And the reason why the rate that the bank loans people like you and I is higher than what they pay the government is because they need to make profit.
Exactly.
Just like when you go to the grocery store and you buy a bottle of wine, or you go to the restaurant and it's a lot more expensive than what they actually paid for it, or what you can even get it for at the grocery store if you go to a restaurant. But because whoever's selling you that product needs to make money on it.
Yes. So I think that's what you have to think of a loan as, is a product where banks are making money, because that's what this whole world revolves around, is making money.
That is so true, isn't it?
That's what happens. Yes. So the banks need to make money. So we're borrowing money and paying an interest rate so they make money. And then that also allows them to turn around and sell that loan or that product to another, I guess, bank.
But this Keeping Current Matters graph that we're looking at here shows that right now the average over the last 50 years has been 1.79% higher than the prime, but now it's 2.99%.
Yep. So for example, today,
Higher.
if the 10-year Treasury yield is at 3.5% and the mortgage rate is 2.99% higher, then the mortgage rate that we as a consumer are going to get is 6.49%.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the past, on average, it's been 1.7% higher than whatever today's 10-year Treasury is. So you can, if you're interested in what the mortgage rates are doing, you can literally Google the 10-year Treasury yield graph, and it follows.
Right.
Exactly.
And I think we
graph.
have that graph that we can show here too.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was at the average 1.79% higher, then our rates right now would be 5.49%, which would definitely be better.
Why then, if the difference between the 10-year Treasury yield and mortgage rates has been 1.79 in the past, why is it 2.99% right now? We think it has a lot to do with inflation. So they're printing money, the cost of servicing the loan is higher, and the dollar is just worth less.
Right.
So the lenders, the mortgagors, have to charge more to the consumer in order to make up that difference.
So if inflation goes down, then maybe that 2.99% will go back to the 1.79%, and potentially we could be at closer to a 5.5% interest rate.
But on the flip of that, the way that Jerome Powell,
Our friend Jerome,
the Feds, is controlling inflation is by raising that prime rate, which in turn raises mortgage rates. But I would say the difference, or the spread, the difference in the spread between the two, 10-year Treasury and mortgage rate, might become less as inflation lessons.
I thought that's what I said. This is complicated.
It is complicated. So yes, I guess maybe it'll even itself out. Like it'll cancel each other out.
think exactly. Well, hopefully, I think the point is that if inflation does go down, yes, I can see what you're saying. The prime could go up even more than it's at the 3.5%.
But then if inflation goes down because that tool worked and we have less of a difference between the two rates, then the mortgage rates should level out a little bit. Like they shouldn't be going up and down.
You know what I think we need to do?
What?
I think we need to just have Bodie on the podcast to explain it all.
Call in a professional mortgager.
Exactly.
Tune back in when we have Bodie Shepherd on the podcast talking more in depth about mortgage rates.
Have somebody that can explain a little bit better.
Okay.
So
we may not be experts on how the 10-year Treasury works. But what I will say is we know how to read newspaper articles because we know that headlines do more to terrify than clarify.
It is so true. I mean, and you try to get I just want to know really quick what they're saying.
Yeah.
So you just read the headline and you're like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
But you don't got it. The headline is just to catch you, grab you, pull you in. They're lying.
They're lying to you.
Or they're just trying to, sell magazines.
It's clickbait.
I understand.
They're trying to get you to click on it. But the trouble is like 90% of people don't click on it. They just read the headline.
Right.
So there are, I will say, sometimes they have like little bullet points at the top of the article that tell you what the summary or like the key takeaways are, which is nice. But especially lately, there's just a lot of interest in the housing market and what the market's doing. So it's a really good time for these companies to capture your attention.
So for example, this one says that homeowners have lost 1.5 trillion in equity since May as home prices drop.
Here's what I like. They say since May.
True.
So most of the time you will just see that homeowners have lost equity, home prices are going down, but they don't say since when because that is such a relevant point. So if you look at the average, if you look at the median price point in Chico, November 2021, it's $440,000. That is our most recent data. November 2022, $440,000.
So the average sales price.
Yep. Median.
So in this article, though, it says 1.5 trillion in losses. And you're right. They do point out since May, which is great. But that's not what even sticks in my head when I read that. And I know that it's not accurate or true. Mm-hmm. So really, year over year, we're at the same values in Chico anyway.
Yes.
And I think what did you say it was nationally? 6%?
Yeah, 6% appreciation nationally. And in our entire MLS here, which is a lot of different counties all over California, the median is 750 last year this time and 750 this year right now.
So it's the same year over year.
So it's the same year over year in our area.
Interesting.
Since May, it has come down. In our area, the median in May was 500,000, and that was our peak. Like if you're looking at a graph, that's when prices start to come down is after May. Mm-hmm. So this article does that headline makes sense, but the way that they word it is really scary.
The moral of the story is that don't just read the headline. You need to read through the entire article so that you can see the information because it does present essentially what Kelsey and I just discussed. So the next topic, though, is going to be, which kind of rolls into
foreclosures.
Yeah.
Foreclosure is a really scary word, and I think it's also what is that word? Buzzword.
Yeah.
Foreclosure is a buzzword. And even going into the pandemic, there was Susie Orman. There were all these people saying foreclosures are on the rise because people are going to be losing their jobs and they're not going to be able to afford their mortgage anymore. And that did not happen. In fact, we saw the lowest amount of foreclosures we've ever seen, I believe, or at least in
since 2003. I mean,
even before that,
right? I mean, so 2003, there were 745,000 foreclosures, and then at the dip of the market, I should say the crash, in 2009, there were 2 million foreclosures. So there's another article, or that article that says they've lost trillions of dollars. Plus, there's other articles that say foreclosures are going through the roof. Well, if you look at this graph by KCM, and they did go up a little from 2021, but right now we're sitting at 88,000 foreclosures, which is much lower than it even was in 2019.
Yeah, in 2019 we had 278,000, and now we have 88,000.
Why do you think we won't see foreclosures?
There are so many reasons. I will say we don't know what's going to happen to unemployment next year. And there is a lot of chatter around that. The thing is even if people lose their jobs, those who own homes have such low interest rates and low payments, low mortgage payments that they can hopefully they can afford it. But staying in their home and making that work is going to be their best bet. Because if they have to sell, first of all, they do have equity in their homes and they will be able to sell and not foreclose. But then their option is to go rent. So is their rent going to be more affordable than their mortgage payment? It depends.
I think they're going to, unlikely. I mean,
very unlikely.
For sure. And I think that most people have equity unless they bought in that little short window.
Yep.
And didn't put any money down.
Yeah.
So most people are sitting really well in terms of their equity numbers. So that's why I think, but versus the crash where it was like you paid $350 and you owed $360.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
And then the market dropped to $300.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's what's really keeping this housing economy hanging on, is the fact that we had so much appreciation in such a short amount of time. And housing prices are not going down, really, not a significant amount anyway. And so if these people who lose their jobs and can't afford their mortgages have to sell, they will still be selling at a profit, not at a loss. Therefore, why would they have to foreclose?
It just doesn't make sense.
It does not make sense. So that's what we have to say about foreclosures. And thanks, everyone.
All right. Peace out.